The city of Los Angeles had never seemed so dark. The streetlights flickered as if they were trying to fight against a darkness that seemed to swallow every corner of the city. When I walked into the Cecil Hotel, an uncomfortable sensation washed over me. The lobby, vast and stuffy, exuded an old smell of mold and aged wood. The atmosphere felt stuck in time, as if nothing there was real, as if the hotel existed only on the fringes of reality. I didn't know what drew me to this place. It was a mix of curiosity and, perhaps, a feeling of being somewhere I shouldn't be. The Cecil wasn't just a hotel, it carried stories, whispers no one dared to tell, of disappearances, deaths, and a dark past that clung to its halls. But, being young and seeking freedom, the idea of a different place seemed appealing. The receptionist was rude, barely looking at me when I handed over my ID. He gave me the key with a blank expression, as if he were used to ignoring the guests. As I walked down the hotel corridor, the sound of my footsteps echoed off the walls. There was something strange about the silence, something that didn't seem natural. I knew I needed to rest, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Upon entering my room, the furniture was old, as if it had been bought decades ago and never touched again. The mirror on the wall seemed to distort my reflection, as though something was wrong, but I looked at it with determination. It was just my imagination, I thought. But as I lay down, I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something was moving inside the hotel. The sound of the wind hitting the windows was not comforting. It was as if an invisible presence was lurking in the building, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. I woke in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat. In the hallway, a figure passed quickly, vanishing into the shadows. There was no sound, but I felt it. I felt that something was wrong. The fear grew inside me. I didn't know if it was the hotel or something else. A feeling that I wasn't alone, that something ancient and malevolent was already waiting for me there. What I didn't know was that what I would find at the Cecil wouldn't just be a nightmare. It would be something much worse. The next morning, the fog of uncertainty still hung in the air, and something inside me knew that the Cecil Hotel was no ordinary place. The silence was deeper, more oppressive. The corridors, now empty, seemed to stretch endlessly, as if the hotel itself was elongating, swallowing each of my steps. I wanted to leave, but some inexplicable force kept me here, as if the building itself was holding me captive. I decided to go out and explore a bit, try to make sense of the growing sense of claustrophobia. But as I passed the reception, the attendant looked at me with an enigmatic smile, as if he knew something I hadn't yet discovered. "Enjoy your stay," he said, with a tone that sounded more like a warning than a simple well-wish. My steps led me to the elevator, an old iron model, whose doors creaked as if protesting their use. I entered, pressing the button for the ground floor, but before the doors closed, an odd sensation took hold of me. I looked at the buttons, but something was wrong. They were different, out of place, as if they were too old for this technology, as if they belonged to another time. The elevator lights began to flicker, and a shiver ran down my spine. I ascended to the 4th floor without realizing, the sound of the elevator slicing through the silence with an unusual speed. When the doors opened, there was no one there, but the atmosphere felt wrong. The dim light didn't do justice to the space. It was as if the very air was thick, charged with something that shouldn't be there. Trying to mask the fear that gripped my chest, I exited the elevator and walked down the corridor. But then, a sense of panic overtook me. The shadows on the walls seemed to move, distorted, as if they were coming to life. When I glanced behind me, the elevator door was open, but there were no signs that anyone had exited. The air grew denser, the floor colder, and the sound of my breaths echoed like a muffled scream in the silence. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. Silent, but close. I looked to the end of the corridor, and for a moment, I thought I saw a hooded figure watching me. When I blinked, it was gone. My mind screamed for me to return to my room, but something told me that the truth of the Cecil was still waiting for me, and I couldn't just run away. The sensation that something or someone was watching me intensified, as if the very corridors were alive, breathing in unison with my anxiety. I was at the center of a mystery that was no longer just about me. Something much older and darker was at work. I already knew something was terribly wrong. The air in the Cecil had become even denser, heavy with a weight that seemed to come from distant times, from something far beyond my understanding. Nightfall arrived, and the hotel transformed into a living nightmare. The walls breathed, the corridors twisted at impossible angles, and I could feel the eyes of the building itself watching every movement I made. I decided to investigate what was behind the constant feeling of being watched, what was hidden in the shadows of those walls. The only clue I had was a murmur that seemed to come from the depths of the hotel, a muffled sound, almost imperceptible, but it called to me, it beckoned me. I followed the sound, my heartbeat pounding in my chest like a frantic drum. I descended to the basement, where the smell of mold and despair mixed with the cold air. When I reached the door to an old storage room, the sound stopped. There was something in there, something waiting for me, and I knew there was no turning back. I opened the door, and in the far corner of the dark room, a metal staircase led down to a hole in the ground. What I saw down there was beyond explanation. The well was immense, deeper than any ordinary well, with black waters that seemed to pulse, as if the very liquid was alive. I knew that well was the dark heart of the Cecil, the place where evil had nested and waited for me. The lights flickered as a presence began to form in the darkness. Something that wasn't human, but in some way had been watching me, following me. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its presence. The hotel had drawn me there, like a fly in a spider's web, and there was no escaping it. The figure approached, and before I could scream, an invisible force pulled me into the darkness. Everything became a whirlwind of voices and shadows. When I finally regained consciousness, the Cecil was silent, but I knew the evil hadn't gone. It had taken me. The hotel had consumed me completely, and the only thing that remained was the echo of my voice, lost forever in the depths of that cursed place. And as I sank into the darkness, a single phrase echoed in my mind, "The Cecil never lets go."